I think the conversation can absolutely be had here. And they have a very strong rotation. And they also compare him with Zach Gallen atop the rotation. And I saw some rumors on Twitter that this could end up prompting the Diamondbacks to listen on a Zach Gallen trade.
So we just heard, obviously, Scott Braun and Cameron Maybin talking about the Josh Naylor move. We know where he's going to be, but there are some other guys out there that we're wondering where the heck are they going to end up. Robert Murray joining us now, MLB Insider. You can catch his work on fansided.com. Robert, as always, thanks for being with us. Let's start with those kind of big free agents. Can you please tell us, my friend, where the heck is Alex Bregman going?
That is a huge mystery right now. And I know at the GM meetings, I got the indication from talking to Dana Brown that a reunion with the Astros seemed pretty likely. And then they ended up, they were not able to meet up on terms, and the Astros quickly pivoted to Christian Walker. And that seemingly rules the Astros out, which leaves his market as a huge mystery. The team that everyone is kind of looking at is the Detroit Tigers. They have a need there. They have money available. And they also have the AJ Hinch connection, which makes a lot of sense for both sides. We'll see if a deal ultimately gets done there. There's other teams that have poked around. We've seen like the Red Sox mentioned, although I don't necessarily know if that's the most likely thing. We saw John Heyman connect the Chicago Cubs to Bregman the other day, so maybe that's a possibility. But the team I'm looking at right now is the Tigers, and everything else with that, as I said, is kind of a mystery.
We hear everything about Bregman, possibilities, Hinch, all this stuff. Everybody needs a third baseman. Then they fill in their needs at first, and then it's like, we kind of fill it out. Where does this leave Pete Alonso? I mean, Pete Alonso's name is nowhere out there other than, I think recently, the Yankees called Pete Alonso. Is it just a foregone conclusion that he's going to be a Met again?
I wouldn't say foregone conclusion. I think that's probably the most likely scenario, just because Alonso is such a great fit in New York and they need a first baseman there. But the common sentiment from both sides is that there's a pretty big gap remaining in negotiations. And as reported, it's been the years that's been the biggest issue. And that's not necessarily a surprise here. We've seen David Stearns not be really willing to invest significant years into players who are going to be around 30 or above 30 from a position player standpoint. And Alonso, while he's a great offensive threat, he's one of the best power hitting first basemen in baseball. I don't think they're willing to give him the extended years that he currently seeks. And so that's kind of stalled negotiations. I still think, as I said, he's the most likely option for the Mets there. But you can look at other teams such as the San Francisco Giants, I think, make a lot of sense there. The Los Angeles Angels, you can never really rule out Artie Moreno making a surprise splash. And it sounds like they have been poking around on the bat market, which if you heard Perry talk about or talk at the winter meetings, he was still open to adding a power bat even after getting Jorge Soler. So that could be another option. But my guess is that Alonso ends up back in New York. It's just taking longer than I think both sides would prefer here.
Yeah, and I think you said something like, and you're not the only one, and I don't want to pinpoint just you, but people always talk about his offensive production. In my opinion, I get it. He's not the great defender, but he's not the bad defender. I think he's somewhat in the middle there. I think people take for granted his defense a little bit. I think he does play well defense. He's been known his numbers-wise to be able to pick the baseball. He's one of the best at first base to do that on bad throws. I think, honestly, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to money and years. I just wanted to get that out there. People always talk about the defense. Whatever happened to, if you hit, they'll find a place for you. All this analytical bull crap has kind of taken over. And I really, not to vouch for him because I play with him, but it drives me crazy when people, and you didn't say it, but when people say, hey, we're worried about his defense. No, the kid can play.
No, he's a great player. Like he's an elite player, and we've seen him step up in the big moments. He was getting a lot of flack late in the year, but then in the playoffs against Milwaukee, he ended up having that series clinching home run off of Devin Williams in the 9th inning. And he's stepped up in the biggest moments. He's a leader. His defense, as you said, is underrated. I'll vouch for you on that one, Todd. So you're spitting facts as usual. But he's a great player. He deserves a big contract. But I think if he returns to the Mets, a short-term deal, maybe with an opt-out after year one, which has been a Scott Boras special in recent off seasons, I think that could make a lot of sense where it would allow him to go back to free agency or even opt into the second year of the deal, kind of like what Cody Bellinger did before he ended up getting traded to the Yankees. So there's a lot of different options, but the short-term deal could be the the most likely scenario for a return to the Mets.
Robert, let me ask you this, though. Even if it is a short-term deal, we're hearing numbers of, perhaps the Mets are willing to offer $90 million and Pete Alonso wants something upward of $100. That's a lot for a first baseman. You don't usually see those types of numbers for first baseman. I mean, how far apart do you think both sides of the equation are?
I think we're at a pretty sizable gap at this point, and that could lead to a lot of different things happening here. It could allow a different team to swoop in and steal Alonso away from the Mets, and that would force them to kind of scramble, especially with such limited options available for them at first base. I mean, they could move Vientos over to first base and maybe end up signing someone to play third. I mean, there's some possibilities there, but there is a pretty big gap here, and there's a team, I know we're going to be talking about it later, but the team that I think that should swoop in and get him is the Seattle Mariners. They have such a need for another bat. They need offense. They need to supplement that pitching. They cannot trade from that pitching in order to supplement the offense. Keep the pitching staff intact. Go and improve the lineup. And the best way to do that is either with Pete Alonso or Bregman. I've been adamant about that. I did a pretty big rant about it on my podcast the other day, and here I am again and doing that again. So.
I love that. I love Pete Alonso, the polar bear up in the big Northwest. Good for you, Robert. But before I get to my pitching question, you said something about them needing to pivot. And when I think of pivoting this offseason, Kyle Tucker needing to get traded because they saw what Juan Soto was getting, all that stuff. Is there a chance that the Mets pivot to Bregman and moving Vientos over to first base if this gap is as big as you say it is?
I mean, it's always possible. I mean, we've seen Steve Cohen go out and spend big dollars on the market, and I mean, it would not surprise me at all. I cannot say that's something I've heard strongly there. So take that for whatever it's worth. But that being said, I mean, the only team that we're really hearing about both privately and publicly has been the Tigers at this point. The Red Sox, as I said, I'm skeptical about that one. There's other teams that have been linked in reports, but I mean, if the Mets want to go out and do it, I mean, I think they have an ample opportunity to do so. So I wouldn't rule it out, but it's not something I've heard the strongest here.
All right, now we're going to go to one of your tweets. You said Max Fried. It's okay. This is why we bring you on here. We keep you honest. Your tweet said, a look at the contracts of the top free agent starting pitchers. Max Fried, $218 million with no deferrals. Corbin Burnes, $210. Blake Snell, $182 million. Burnes and Snell, both previous Cy Young Award winners, signed for less guaranteed money than Fried. The floor is yours, sir. It's not a question. It's more of a comment to defend what you said. Do you think it's worth it? Or do you think it is just a case where maybe the Yankees overpaid?
I'm glad you brought this up. But I do think that the Yankees, they ended up overpaying for Fried here. And getting to the 8th year was a necessary thing for them to do because they had strong competition from teams like the Texas Rangers for his services. And the Rangers were a serious threat in the end for Fried. And getting to the 8th year was what got the Yankees Max Fried. But they could have ended up spending on a Corbin Burnes type. They could have got a Blake Snell type. But I think getting Fried was a really strong move. For the Yankees, it solidified their rotation, and they could still do some different things. Maybe they could trade a Marcus Stroman. I mean, who knows there? But they wanted Fried. They identified the player and as a player that they really wanted, and they're the Yankees, so they can go out and overspend on these kind of guys. As far as Corbin Burnes goes, his market was really – it was the Giants. There was a bunch of other teams like the Blue Jays, but he really wanted to be closer to Arizona where his family resides. He's got a lot of connections here in Scottsdale, and that was not something that really ended up becoming a strong possibility until late in the process, and it really ramped up. It was something that the Diamondbacks wanted to do. Ken Kendrick, he saw it as an opportunity to add an elite pitcher, and the structure is a little unique. It's 6 years. There's an opt-out after year 2, and there's $10 million deferred in the first 2 years and 11 per year in the first 2 years, and then $11 million deferred in each of the last 4 years. And I just found out this morning that the contract also contains a full no trade clause for those first 2 years and then a limited no trade clause for those last 4 years. So I don't know if that's out there yet. Maybe we just broke a little tidbit here on foul territory, which we always love to do that. But it was a case where Burnes really wanted to be in Arizona. I think that's why he ended up getting less guaranteed than a guy like Max Fried. And then Blake Snell, I mean, that was just a fit with the Dodgers where that was something he really wanted to be there as well. It was a strong contract, a lot of deferrals. I think if he would have waited, he may have gotten more money. But at the end of the day, Fried got the most and wanted to be a Yankee and ultimately is now a Yankee.
And I think you hit it perfectly because we were talking about this earlier, your pros and cons to and anything you really do in life. And for him, I think it was the right decision. I think he's being close to home, and now, he just had twins too as well. So there's a lot of factors going into some guys' decisions. Does this, I want to ask this question because we talked about this. Does this make the Diamondbacks the best top 1 through 5, 1 through 6 pitching staff in the West, or even maybe in baseball, in your opinion?
I think the conversation can absolutely be had here. And they have a very strong rotation. And they also compare him with Zach Gallen on top of the rotation. And I saw some rumors on Twitter that this could end up prompting the Diamondbacks to listen on a Zach Gallen trade. That is not my understanding of what the Diamondbacks want to do. They want to have Burnes here along with Gallen and try to really compete in the National League West. And it gives them insurance in case Gallen does leave in free agency at the end of the year. But they want to pair those guys atop the rotation. They want to continue to go for it. But the rotation is really, really good. It might be the best in the National League. I don't know if I'd put it up there with the Mariners quite yet, just because the Mariners just were so good last year. But they have the ingredients of being a really strong team. They also are continuing to look on the bullpen market. I know Kirby Yates is a player of interest there. They've also explored they've also explored the trade market. You can hear Cooper squeaking his toys in the background. So hi, Cooper. And they've also listed on some of their outfielders, although I don't necessarily know the likelihood of that happening. But Burnes was their big splash. I expect them to continue to go for it with that rotation. Who knows? Maybe they can end up upsetting the Dodgers or some of these other teams like they did a couple of years ago.
Shh, Robert, you can't say that. Alana's on here. She heard you talking. So if you say something about the Dodgers, you just got to put your hand over your mouth like this, and then she won't hear you.
After the show is done here, I'm going to just write a 5,000-word apology to you, Alana. I feel
She'll be okay. She'll be okay.
Stop it.
She'll be
Stop
okay.
It, Kratz.
What is another move? I mean, how can we choose what another move for the Diamondbacks is? You talk about the bullpen. This came out of nowhere. We had no idea they were going to go and look for this type of upgrade. Yeah, you might get like a Lance Lynn or something like that, but this is a marquee upgrade, top of the market upgrade. What's another move? Are they willing to trade from some of their successful young position players to make another move that's more of a veteran splash?
I mean, I think where you could end up looking at that is their outfield depth. You have Alec Thomas. You also have Jake McCarthy there. I mean, maybe they can end up trading one of those guys if you really want to go all out for someone who's an elite option in the late innings of the bullpen. The guys that I would look at, maybe like a Pete Fairbanks or a Ryan Helsley. Fairbanks drew significant interest last year at the deadline from the Tampa Bay Rays, but they were never really inclined to move him. And I know there is a lot of talk about a trade being close at the deadline last year. My understanding was nothing was close there whatsoever. They wanted to hold on to him. It was important for him to stay in Tampa. I don't know if that's necessarily the case anymore, but they value him very highly in Tampa. So I think that could end up being a difficult move to pull off. Helsley, the Cardinals, they got a lot of different possibilities as far as trade options because they're not calling this a rebuilding year. They're calling it a retooling year. They've been pretty adamant about that phrasing. And maybe moving on from a Helsley type and shedding that salary could allow them to implement some of these younger guys in the bullpen. And that could be an opportunity where Arizona uses that outfield depth to strike. I don't know if that's something they've discussed, but it would make a lot of sense in my eyes.
Robert, before we let you go, if you take a look at the Athletics free agent big board, there are a lot of guys out there that still need some place to play in 2025. Obviously, we've talked about Sasaki, Bregman, Alonso at length. Is there anybody else on this board that kind of sticks out to you and makes you shake your head a little bit about where is this guy going?
To me, it's Jack Flaherty, and he is at this point the best arm remaining on the market. He's 29 years old. He also does not have the qualifying offer attached to him, and he was great for the Tigers last year at the start. He faded off after getting traded to Baltimore, but then last year he really ended up looking like a strong option, especially in LA, and he was instrumental in their World Series run. And to me, he's deserving of a multi-year contract. From my understanding, he's drawn plenty of interest. I think he is a guy who should not be on the market at this point. He is too talented of a player to still be lingering. Maybe teams are having pause with giving him a long-term deal. I don't know. But to me, he stands out among or above the rest, especially in a market that's just been so pitching heavy. And he should find a home sooner rather than later and get a very strong average annual value on his deal.
All right, we can't let you go until I see Cooper. It's a must.
Uh-oh. Cooper, buddy. Come here.
Nope.
You can get up. Is he stuck? Come here.
What?
Oh, look
We're
at
gonna
that
play?
baby. Welcome to the Murray family. Look at that
Oh,
baby.
say hi,
What a
buddy.
sweet-
Uh-oh.
What a
He's
sweet-
playing hard to get.
Hey everybody, be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.